we're Trincon Group, and we're Columbus, Ohio. We specialize in the trucking industry, and we have been doing that since 1982. We not only provide advisory services, but we also provide, a cost modeling software called True Costing, which is not the subject of this webinar. Really, what we're here to talk about are executive strategies to overcome, the driver shortage. This is huge, and what I'd like to stress here is that as we go through this program, we're going to be presenting a lot of ideas, and we're not going to go into depth on each idea. We're here to put as many ideas out there at the executive level as we can for you to think about and consider changing to. I will tell you that there's not an idea that we're putting out here that we have not done before in conjunction with our clients. Okay, so these are not pipe dreams or Cloud9 strategies. These are things that we've implemented that have had real effect with the Trincon client structure over the years. So we're going to approach this, in 3 different steps. Okay, and just apply some logic to it. The first part is realistically solve your turnover problem first. It just doesn't make sense to either bring new people into an industry or bring drivers from the industry into your company if you haven't solved your turnover issues. And turnover continues to be a huge problem. That's not getting any better. If you've read the stats this last week, for the last quarter, actually inched up a little bit. And both small carriers and large carriers are over 90%. And when you think about that, that's staggering. We get used to it. Sometimes you get the impression from articles that you see in the in Transport Topics and other, when it drops down, or it's down around 85%, that's great. I mean, just think about that. These are jobs that people can make, $50,000 to $65,000, $70,000 a year, and we have a turnover problem, that says, we just about have to turn our entire fleet as an industry each year. It's staggering. Because before you throw more wood on the fire, solve your turnover problem first. Behind that, you need to have the right operations team. Once that driver comes on board and you do a good job of bringing them on board, the people who manage them, on a day-to-day basis, specifically their dispatchers or driver managers, have more impact on turnover than any group, in your company. Okay, so you've got to have the right team organized with the right people, and once you've got that in place, because those are the things that will impact your turnover, then you've got to have something to sell so you can attract new people to come, whether it's existing drivers or new drivers to the industry. You've got to have something to sell specifically to the group you're trying to attract. And we've got to become market-driven in this, marketing-driven. This is a selling process, and you've got to be able to do it. So with that in mind, okay, let's find out who's in the audience. We have a polling questions through the course of this so we can communicate back and forth. And Lisa, if you'll turn the polls on, we'd like to have you answer these 3 quick questions so we have a better feel of who we're talking to. What type motor carrier are you? Okay, we have a smattering of just about every type, with the exception there are no non-asset brokers out there. Okay, that's I don't know what they get out of this if there were. Okay, all right. Next question. What's your fleet size? Well, we've got from very small to pretty good size. Okay, we've got some big carriers out there and some very small ones. And it's a very mixed audience, and that's good. Okay, and we're going to go to the next one real quick. What kind of a fleet are you? Interesting. This is a trend we're seeing more and more in our programs. None of you are contract-only carriers. Interesting. Okay. All right. So moving on here, all right. You know, we hear an awful lot about how expensive turnover is, and we'd like to help you put a number on it because people say it costs $5,000, $6,000, $7,500 to hire a new driver. That's not where the real cost is, and most of you who've been in our programs before know we have this model that we build called whatever trucking company, and from that we create some stats that are pretty realistic. This is a fleet, say of 250 trucks, most of which are company trucks. They have 10 trucks sitting against the fence, about 5% of the fleet, which is very, very common anymore, okay, because of the shortage. They have a turnover rate for drivers 85%, which is 10 points below the national average. And contractors' turnover is low. It takes 30 days to reseat a truck. So what it boils down to, or what are the costs? Well, first of all, you've got your budgetary recruiting costs. You advertise, you've got staff, you go out and you do deals, and you have shows and workshops, all that kind of good stuff, and maybe you say a company this size, maybe that turns out to be $29,000 a month, and that's a lot of money, okay? But here's where the real cost is, for those 10 trucks that are empty while you're reseating them, and if you're a dry freight carrier, your gross margin, that's the money you have left over after you pay your variable expenses, is 35%. There's $89,000 lost in gross profit margin. That's not going to the bottom line. If those trucks are operating, that's how much more it would impact your bottom line. And for the 10 empty trucks, there's another about $74,000 at that range. If you're a refrigerated or if you're a bulk carrier, your gross margins are higher because your fixed costs are higher. So that number is even larger. But in this case, for a fleet that size, almost $200,000 a month, that equates to an increase of 2 full percentage points on the bottom line. So it's a huge number, okay? And let's just basically talk about, why do drivers leave, okay? Well, let's be realistic about this, okay? Because, there's a lot of things we want to think why they leave, because they're unstable and this kind of stuff, and they just jump the fence for money. That's not the reason why they leave. First of all, they leave because we make bad hires in many cases. You got to stop hiring people who have a history of job hopping or bad references or bad work history, because what makes you think they're going to stay for you? You've got to play the odds, okay? You've got to stop making bad hires, okay? And then once you've got them, they leave because of poor communications. I know everyone wants to think it's money. That money is the excuse they give you as they walk out the door because they're non-confrontational. But in reality, if you're not communicating with these people and making them feel like they belong, starting in orientation, defining expectations that you have for the job, and if you're not helping them and nurturing them into the truck for the first 30 days, and you have poorly trained driver managers, and you're getting inadequate feedback on performance, no recognition, and poor communications about the company, you're going to have high turnover. Good marketing in the future is going to attract drivers to your company. Good communications keeps drivers. Just that simple, okay? And on top of that, inconsistent home time. You've got to realize this, if you're going to have home time and you want any stability to your life, it's something you've got to be able to plan on, okay? And with hours of service, we're forced into planning, and what we should be planning are 5-day weeks for our drivers, and that's the reality of it, okay? Simply stated, drivers don't feel connected, and that's why they leave. That's the biggest reason they leave, and we've established this over and over and over years, okay? So be logical. Don't look to the industry to solve this problem. Come to grips with the reality that we've not been good as an industry. Now, there's exceptions to this. There's some companies out there doing a great job now. It's not a black and white world, but the vast majority, have not been good at recruiting, orientation, communications, or establishing driver accountability. And you've got to change your mindset and stop using the same things that you've been doing. We see too much of everyone doing more of what they've done in the past, only trying to do it better. Doesn't work, okay? And you've got to think about drivers differently. You've got to think in terms of them as employees. And think about that now. Do we think of it? Do we treat them as employees? Do we call them employees? Do we pay them like employees? Do we communicate with them like employees? In most cases, not, okay? And so why should they feel connected? So what's our opinion based on? Well, you know, we've got a lot of analysis and history, and over the years, we've done a lot of surveys ourselves, okay? We've dug into statistics, most recent driver compensation studies, all that kind of good stuff. On top of that, you know, we have 33 years of hands-on advisory services in the industry, and like I said earlier, we're not going to be talking about anything today that we haven't done, okay, successfully. Part of our experience goes back, you know, quite a ways. Many of you may remember a company called MS Carriers before they were acquired by Swift. They had about 5,000 trucks. They're a publicly held company back beyond, and we had a joint venture with them through 1999 to 2001 to establish a school and bring drivers out of Puerto Rico, who are citizens, okay, on a commuter base into their fleet. And we did that. We established a school that was capable of a PTDI certified school that was capable of processing 25 drivers a week under that curriculum, okay? And they commuted back and forth, okay? They would come back, they'd come to work for 26 days, go home for, you know, for 9, and they never drove the same truck. They were managed by us. They were held accountable. Effectively, what we did is we built a career path opportunity for them, and they had to work up the food chain, you know, from being a trainee to second class, first class drivers. They had the opportunity to go into our school. They became supervisors, okay? And we only hired people who wanted jobs for the right reasons, because we offered them a career path. And at the end of that 2-year period that they committed to, MS Carriers had agreed that any of those drivers, you know, could come to the States. They would transfer them over and could go into any job opportunity that they qualified for, okay? So after 6 months, okay, we had 150 drivers into the program being managed as a group, okay? They had the best on-time record in the fleet. We had the best safety record in the fleet. We had the lowest workers' comp claims in the fleet. And we had an annualized driver turnover of only 35%, and these were drivers who were traveling back and forth from Puerto Rico, living in their trucks, carrying their own coolers and all that kind of good stuff. So we learned from that if you hire the right people for the right reason and you treat them properly, okay, as employees and as professionals looking for a career opportunity, that you can have amazing results. So we're bringing that experience to you today, you know, in the form of our webinar talking about driver development and retention. So with that in mind, what's a strategy? As I said before, solve your turnover problem first. You know, where most of this happens is in the first 30 days. That's where the seeds are planted. You've got to connect. You know, your recruiting program has got to bring people in the door who think they picked the right place and they think they want this job, and what used to be an orientation program should evolve into an onboarding program to make sure that by the time they leave there, they want to keep that job, okay? And then you've got to have the right operations team and get rid of the dispatcher concept and evolve with driver managers who are supervisors who lead and manage the activity of these people, okay, and maintain a management relationship with them. And on top of that, once that's in place, you've got to have something to sell. You've got to be out there attracting people. You've got to be able to define why a driver would want to come to work for your company with the right mindset, like this is the last job he'll ever want. Why do they want to come? You know, we're all out there, you know, we all want jobs, but different people want them for different reasons. And drivers as a group, you know, might want a job for a different reason than you do. But you've got to have, you know, you have to know what that is, and you've got to have a marketing program that sells to it as part of your recruiting effort. Recruiting is a marketing effort. You've got to have something to sell, okay? So consider this. All new sources coming from outside the industry are going to require schools. No choice in the matter. You've got to develop a relationship with a school. And if you haven't done that, it's just one more instance where the same old programs are not going to solve this problem. And I'll tell you, you know, Einstein said it best. He said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that's what we see We see too many companies out there essentially doing the same things they've done in the past and hung up on the same thoughts and idea process. You've got to change. So let's look at the first one, of the idea of onboarding versus orientation. But first of all, a real quick poll, one more poll. How many have key personnel, in addition to your safety people, who actively participate on a planned, scheduled basis in your driver orientation program? Please check, and you can check both. If they're all involved, just check multiple ones. So please check that one.
Duff, while they're answering their poll, I've had a question.
Go ahead.
Someone, has said that they get calls all the time. I get calls from drivers every day that are in these type of programs that are paid less and just looking to get full pay.
Okay, but what was the question?
Well, I guess it was more of a comment that someone gets calls from drivers that are in the types of programs you were talking about that were being paid less and are looking to get more money. I guess it was, I'm not sure what the question was, but.
Yeah, that's a little bit difficult to ask. It's not a very clear question. And again, we're going to talk about driver pay briefly. You'll plan an idea, okay, later on in the program, and maybe that will answer your question. Okay, getting back to our polls here. Okay, 27% of you either have your president or your CEO involved. Okay, 36% of you head of operations, 27% head of payroll and benefits, and none head of maintenance, and only 9% use experienced drivers. Now think about this, okay? If you want to make people connect with your company and start communications, and if you're an employee, wouldn't you want to come in and meet the people you're going to work for and have them explain to you, what the company is, where it's going, and how it affects you, and make that connection, as personal as you possibly be. In a situation this important, drivers who you want to get, you want to keep, okay? So in order to do this, we simply got to think in terms of onboarding and not just orientation, okay? And what's onboarding all about? This is using the time to make the associate, and I'm not talking about drivers here, I'm talking about another associate who works for your company, feel important and valued, and allow them to identify with your company. They have to get to know what your company's all about, what it's trying to accomplish, where it's going to go, and how it affects them. What are the expectations? This is the opportunity for you to, to educate them and minimize misunderstandings, build a sense of belonging, and reduce the anxiety, and in the process, define job performance expectations. I mean, what is it that you expect these people to do? Give them a job description, okay? Give them these kind of things. Job description. Define goals and expectations, okay? This is not difficult. This is what we all want. If you think in terms of us as an employee, don't you as an employee want to know what's expected of you so you can live up to expectations, okay? And you also want feedback, okay? You want to know, how am I doing? I mean, have I accomplished this? Is there anything I can do better? And you want, this, you want to review, and on a regular basis, you want to talk to management so you know where the company's going and how it affects you. The same thing is true with this. So the onboarding concept, is far more interactive, hands-on, see, touch, and feel, okay? And meet and engage and walk out of there knowing the people who you're going to work with, okay? And as you enter into the truck, this should be part of the process, okay? For the first 30 days, there should be a nurturing, okay, where you're, maybe not for a full 30 days, but you're being accompanied by an experienced driver, maybe for a day, 2 days, or for a full week. So that person can reinforce what you learned in orientation, okay, and how to live in the truck, how to use the computer, reinforce the job requirements, who are the customers, and reinforce what you learned in orientation so you can get off on the right foot. And here again, expectations. This is where you establish expectations and accountability. And the process starts in orientation and continues in a truck on a schedule. So when you think about expectations, how do we do this? How do we communicate this, okay? By delivering the standards that would be expected, and then making them feel like orientation and 90-day probation is a pass-fail situation. I mean, they're there being analyzed, and you're on a 90-day probation period. So you've got something to accomplish, and you know what the miles you are expected to produce in a truck. You know, on-time delivery, about DOT compliance, and and reinforce the fact, pre-trip inspections, you eliminate out of service, okay? Preventive maintenance. All of these things are important about their job that they're responsible for. Now, another polling question. How many of you actually conduct individual merit reviews for your drivers on this basis? Now, a merit review means something that's other than just discipline. Okay, so please answer those questions.
Again, I had a brief question, if I might ask.
Go ahead.
A participant has asked that when they get finished with orientation with a driver, he personally introduces the driver to the president, payroll, maintenance, so that they can meet everyone. Is that what you are looking for? Is that what you're saying needs to be done?
We would expect more than just an introduction. We're suggesting that those people, should be participating in the orientation program with planned presentations that introduce them to their department, how they interact with it, what's expected of them, hands-on, see, touch, and feel. Like you're going to go out and maintenance, go out, and do a pre-trip inspection on your truck before it's turned over to you on a pass-fail basis. Get hands-on, okay, and get these people involved. The president is very impressive when a president or CEO or COO of the company comes in and personally welcomes everyone and gives them an overview of the company and who they are and what their role is and what their expectation is. Maybe it's only 15, 20 minutes, but it should be expected and it should be part of the presentation. Okay. Now, take this stuff back with you, okay? That's stuff you should be doing. Only 25% of you do semi-annual. Only 58% do annual, okay? 17% only on discipline reviews, and none of you are not sure. I mean, that's, you should take, if you don't have control of that, you should take that back to your company and start talking to them about it, okay? I mean, there's a lesson there, okay? So, and the things, when you start talking about accountability, I mean, completion of orientation, it's like a pass-fail event. I mean, that's the last time you're going to see the guy and have a chance to sign off on him before they go out and get in your truck and determine whether or not he's a risk, okay? After 7 days, a review based on the experienced driver and his driver manager, okay? How they're doing, what they need to work on. The same thing after 30 days. And at 85 days, 5 days before the 90-day probationary period, it's decision time. Have a review. It's kind of a pass-fail situation. And from that particular point on, every 6 months you should be having some kind of review with every employee, and at least every year. And that year should recognize tenure and performance, okay? And recognition is such a part of this. It doesn't have to all be about pay. This is huge. And, in big companies, like UPS, like FedEx and stuff like that, and you see these guys sharp out there looking for drivers because they have an opportunity. They want that job. They're going to keep it. They look sharp. They're in uniforms, okay? And they get recognized, okay? And we have lots of reasons to recognize people. The most common thing that we see is safety being recognized, okay? The least common thing that we see is tenure and special skills being recognized. And this isn't money we're talking about. This is just pure and simple recognition, okay? And periodic communications, okay? It's not that, it's a commitment. Newsletters, they're great. I mean, drivers and their families love them, okay, because it tells them what's going on. It's a commitment. Semi-annual or an annual meeting, there should be regular meetings with drivers that are not just safety meetings, but management should be there and communicating them. Like when you came on board here, I told you this is who we are. Here's where we're going now. Here's what the status is. Here's what you can expect in the future. Here's how it's going to affect you. And annual awards and banquets that include a family, these are huge. I mean, they build a bond with a family that most of us don't fully realize. All right, so we're going to move on to operations, okay? And what we're talking about is a concept that we call central control, okay? And this is how operations should be functioning first of all, to use the tools and the technology that's available to you in today's marketplace and use them as a management and a communication tool and organize in such a way that people are held accountable for what it's all about. And most companies, as they grow, evolve into this kind of a structure, okay? You've got ownership or bosses up here at the top, and usually there's 3 to 4 groups. There's the marketing group who understand what the company's trying to accomplish, and they're going out and they're selling the services to accomplish that group. There's the operations group that has their arms around the ingredients of productivity: drivers, central control or central dispatch, and maintenance. In other words, the drivers, the orders, and the planning and implementation of that, and the equipment to fulfill it, okay? And then admin is back there with lots of services to support that effort. And then safety is over here, as the watchdog they need to be to make sure that they're doing risk management. Well, let's just look at this particular group right here, the operations group, okay? A little closer look, okay? When you break them down, here's those 3 groups: recruiting, central control, maintenance. And the one we really want to zero in on is the ones that manage the drivers on a day-to-day basis, and that's this group right here, okay? Now, most of you have enterprise systems, like TMW, like McLeod, like any number of others, that could be web-based, and they're all designed for you to plan and manage your trucks, okay? And basically, they're designed around this concept of having customer service reps, planners, and driver managers. Now, how does that work? Well, customer service reps deal with customers. They're trained to manage the relationship. They do they accept orders, they solicit orders, they do the load finding, for backhaul, and they help plan those orders in conjunction with the planner. And you're trying to plan 8, 12, 24 hours in advance, okay? And you're creating a plan that the driver managers implement. They're not creating the plan, but they are assigning those loads in that plan to the drivers. They're managing the pickup, the delivery, the whereabouts of the drivers. They're managing the availability of equipment. They're responsible for DOT compliance to supervise that. And equipment, especially preventive maintenance, okay? In other words, they're managers, not just dispatchers. And they are assigned a specific group of drivers, and they are that group's supervisor, as the customer service rep is assigned specific customers, okay? It's not a geographical or a regional thing. And then the planners, the people who plan this, are looking at the total picture. Now, these are all different skill sets, okay? And when you start talking about these customer service reps over here, okay, and the planner, they have different skills, and the driver managers with supervisory skills are not necessarily the best people to create the plan, but they're the best people to manage and implement the plan. So if you do this on a remote basis, or you have terminals, and, your driver manager may be remote. Not a big deal, but planning and customer service, it should be consolidated, so they're always looking ahead and trying to anticipate not just the orders, but also to anticipate problems and solving those particular problems. Now, when you start doing that, you realize that the people involved in that equation have to have different kinds of skill sets and also typically different kinds of personalities and attributes. And when we start getting this very, very accurate ways that you can determine what the personality and the attributes are of people who work for you, so the process called DISC, and there's all kinds of programs out there. They're actually very accurate as long as no one tries to play games with them. And we start falling into categories that can be plotted on this plot graph, okay? And these are descriptors of the type personalities. Now, the people who fall into the blue and red are people who are results-oriented. The people who are green and yellow are team-oriented. They're relationship-driven. They're the people who work for you. They're not trying to lead the pack. They're trying to support the pack, okay? People who are red and yellow are expressive, and people who are blue and green are analyticals. And we all fall into this. Now, most drivers will fall into this lower left-hand quadrant. Supporters, okay? They're not out there to be leaders. They're not out there to be warm and fuzzy. They're saying they're accommodating. They dislike confrontation. They're persistent, control their emotion, adaptable, good listeners. Just tell me what you want me to do. Don't lie to me. When I get there, have something else. Every once in a while, pat me on the back and tell me I'm doing a good job. Typical driver, okay? Not, 100% black and white rule. Leaders come out of trucks too. But for the most part, drivers are people who are supporters, okay? Now, the people who manage them should be up in these categories, okay? Especially your driver manager. Competitive, confrontational, results-oriented, sense of urgency, a change agent. Now, people who have had drivers evolve into driver management roles, usually with bad experiences, it's because that's not who they are. They identify with a team more than in leading a team, and that's what you need to do. Now, and then, your management, may fall into these categories, okay? Now, again, there are processes around that will help you identify this, okay? And when it comes right down to it, you have different type personalities will fit different jobs. The person who you would hire for a salesperson versus the person you would hire to be an accountant are skill sets, attributes, and personality usually completely different. And it all breaks down into a process called examining DISC. Dominant traits, influencing traits, steadiness, and compliance. Lots of sources for this out there. If you can't find one, you want some more information, contact us afterwards. But you should be looking to see if you have the right people in the right place in your operations department. Crucial, okay? Now, getting on to recruiting. You got to have something to sell, okay? You just can't go out there anymore and expect to attract the best drivers from someone else's fleet to come and work for you, or to pull people into the industry who just don't want to be truck drivers but want to come in and work for your company. And that's what we're faced with, creating that kind of environment in the future. We've got to bring people into the industry, okay? And what we're saying is think in terms of a career path at your company, okay? And that implies, something we haven't talked about before, and that's drivers truly as a profession. And my contention is, have we changed our thoughts about this? 30 years ago, sure as hell wasn't considered a profession. It's classified as common labor. So another polling question. How do you consider the position of an OTR driver? Now be honest about this. This is all anonymous. There no bad questions, no bad answers. So the poll is open. Please express that. Well, this is reassuring, okay? Over 90% of you say a valid professional, and 10% roughly say it's still considered a labor position. This is the definition of a professional. A profession arises when any trade or occupation transforms itself through the development of formal qualifications based upon education, apprenticeship, examinations, and the emergence of regulatory bodies with powers to admit and discipline members and some degree of monopoly rights. Now, you just think about what is expected of our drivers, with the technology they're expected to adapt to, the value of the equipment and the freight that they control each day, the expectations of the government, the requirements of the insurance companies, DOT compliance, okay? And they can lose their jobs, okay? They have to qualify, they have to be certified, and they can lose their jobs if they don't perform right. Now, to me, a driver, today's marketplace, is every bit a professional as an electrician or a plumber. And if you don't believe that, then you need to take the steps that are necessary to convince it to yourself, because until we start treating them as employees and they realize that the good ones are professionals that deserve respect, and we want it to improve the quality of their performance in the future, we're making a big mistake. Now, is that difficult to build a career path within your company? Well, let's just think about a career path, a logic of a career path, okay? First place, it should start out, in high school. And here we are as an industry, and what's the driver requirements? 2 years experience, got to be 23 years old. Well, by the time between high school and they're 23 years old, we're not necessarily getting the cream of the crop, okay? Wouldn't it be nice, why couldn't you have someone come out of high school, come into your truck, start out in the shop, sweep the floors, grease trucks, stock parts, then evolve into each department and go through the basic motions and become a driver. Now, it's possible, and most companies don't realize that the 1986 CDL law allowed for 18-year-olds to have a CDL in intrastate operations. And there was an article last week in Transport Topics where Archer Daniels hired their first driver under 21 years old, CDL driver. And so you could have this plan, this path through your company, and then get about 19 and a half, 20 years old, go through get the CDL, drive local, and shag or have some piece of business that's intrastate just for that particular purpose, okay? Now, when you do that, though, they have to go through a driving school, as does anyone else that you pull from outside, regardless of where they come from. Driving schools are now going to be the reality going forward in the future, okay? And so when they come out of that driving school, why can't they come out as a trainee or on probation and evolve with experience to third, second, and first class? Combination of tenure, experience, and or specialization. And they can go on to specialize, things you can recognize them for and compensate them for based on their skills, okay? And at some particular point, maybe a driver wants to become an owner-operator or a small fleet owner. At that particular point, that's a scenario, quite frankly, could go through any fleet that's got 25 trucks or more. Career path is in the eyes of the beholder. And if you make someone realize that if all they want to do is be the very best driver in the world and eventually own their own truck, they can come to your company and accomplish that, why can't you do that? You can. You don't need to have the industry do it. Now, if you're a bigger company, then you can also go out and you can say, well, as you qualify at some particular point, you can evolve into any department that you want to. Most drivers don't want to do that, but everyone wants to know they have the opportunity available to them. And if you're then, evolving and you need management depth at some particular point, you want to start attracting talent out of college, and you take them through the same process. I might add that system has worked out very well for companies like UPS and FedEx. Okay, so there's got to be a reason for people to come into our industry. Okay, and when you take all the positions that exist within, and most of these will exist within the companies that we're talking to in this program, why can't they basically be evolved into something like this, so that the driver comes in, knows what the expectations are, knows what their opportunities are, and they're going to evolve as the best driver in the industry, okay? And along with that, that means that we have to have something to sell, okay? And if you've got a career path to sell, I mean, that gives you something to talk about, okay? It means personal growth. It means there are benefits, and we're used to doing this. The industry is very, very competitive, according to the last survey, on offering benefits, in conjunction with other segments of the economy. Quality of life is something we've got to work on, and it's not just being treated with respect like an employee, but as planned home time. You've got to be committed to make this happen so that it's consistently at the same time. And if that changes your customer structure, if that changes how you market, you damn well better think about doing that in the future, because these are the reasons why in some cases you don't have drivers. And good communication and having a future for themselves and their families. Now, subject always comes up. Is compensation an issue? Well, sure it's an issue, okay? How big an issue? Time after time after time. Surveys have shown, and it comes even more recently, that ownership wants to think it's all about money. But the fact is, what it really is about is how well I'm treated. And if you're competitive, that's the main thing. I mean, most drivers are far more interested in the fact that they can come on and make $50,000 or $55,000 a year than all the details as to how they do it. And the details, I mean, and the last study, and this is the 2013 study, so the information we get is always a year old, and it's not organized so that it's really all that accurate in my opinion, But it does lay out and establish that we're now becoming competitive with other segments of the industry, and that the average dry freight driver, in 2013 made $46,000. In my opinion, right now, that's between $48,000 and $50,000. And I think you're going to see 4, 5, 6%. Some of you have done that. Will be raising pay because, first of place, the position warrants better pay. Number one, and we've got to be competitive outside the industry. And we're think in terms of these people as professional people who you're going to make an investment, okay? But pay gets very, very confusing. The 2013 study also showed that there's all different kinds of ways we're paying these people. In some ways, there are different combinations, okay? The most common plans, most common is per mile, percentage of revenue, and per hour. Now, per mile and percentage of revenue, if you drill down into it, it's not considered, frankly, not considered fair, because the driver, really does have no control over the revenue, and in most cases, unless he's planned properly, doesn't have control over his miles. So they've been paid this way for years, but when you dig right down into it and thinking in terms of the employees and professionals, they really have no control. It's in the hands of somebody else. And when you pay by the hour, you better have excellent management capability like a UPS or some of the LTL companies or FedEx who plan and control the productivity of their drivers so well that they can do it by the hour, okay? Most over-the-road trucking companies do not have that kind of management control. So pay by the hour, considered more fair, but usually not very beneficial to the company. Weekly guarantees becoming very, very common, okay? Sign-on bonuses becoming more and more common. I still question whether or not they're effective. And if they're not structured so that they don't pay off until after the guy's been there long enough to cover it. I mean, one thing TCA did in 2009 during the recession that was good, they established, the 60% of the turnover, happens in 120 days. Again, largely because of bad hires, poor orientation, you're getting off on the wrong foot. That being the case, it's a proven fact that it also takes about 150 days for you to recapture the cost of that hire. So if you're just pulling people in, bodies who are coming in for that bonus, and you're not doing what's necessary to keep them in the seat of that truck, then you're making that equation even have a poor payoff, okay? So what we're promoting and what we think in terms of is, let's think of a driver compensation strategy that makes them feel like an employee and that they can grow with, okay? Think in terms of a salary plus incentives, okay? A bonus for achieving a goal and incentives for going over and above and beyond that goal. I'm going to explain this to you very, very briefly. A salary, if you're giving a driver a guarantee, what's the difference between guarantee and a salary? Okay, a salary says this is our commitment to you, and if something goes wrong and it's not your fault, you have a job. And a bonus says you achieved a certain goal, an expectation, okay, and you got a reward for it, okay. And incentive is you went over and above that, and it's a win-win because now you're delivering to the bottom line, and we're going to share those results. So how can that work? Let's just look at a regional driver where the position, say, might be worth $48,000 a year, okay, and the expectations are 2,500 miles a week. And let's say a driver employee had performance of 2,750 miles, and the revenue was $1.40 a mile. So the excess gross margin, here again, gross margin is what's left over after you cover all your variable expense to go to the bottom line and either absorb your fixed expense or make a profit. And dry freight companies typically about 35% of the revenue turns into gross margin, okay? So the gross margin on that extra 250 miles at $1.40 a mile was $122.50, okay? So what happens? How does this affect the driver, okay? The driver had a weekly pay of $850. He achieved the goal of 2,501 miles and got an additional 10% for achieving the goal. Then for exceeding the goal for that additional 249 miles, got 51% of the gross margin, or $62.50. Now, the weekly pay now is about $1,000, okay? The company, what they receive $60 of the $122.50. And how did that affect profit? Well, if their profit margin, based on 2,500 miles at $1.40, revenue would have been $3,500. Okay, net profit at 5% would have been $175, and the added profit, okay, from that additional yield is 60. So now the total profit's $250, and that's 6% instead of 5%. So there's a 20% increase in profit to the company. So that's a win-win situation. Incentives properly defined so that the person has impact based on what they do to help control that they work. Okay, and this is something you should be looking at. Okay, now getting on to recruiting. Getting back to the fact that as an industry we've not been all that good as recruiters. Okay, I kind of realize that recruiting now has become a selling process. Okay, a marketing process. And when you market, you go out and you prospect. Okay, you find people who most likely will want what you have to offer or want your job. Okay, you then qualify those people so that you know what to sell them and why. And then selling is convincing the drivers that you have the job they want, and you close the deal with orientation and onboarding. Okay, you need to think with that mindset. Okay, this is a selling process. Okay, so your recruiting program, you got to think in terms of who are prospects for us. And there's all kinds of different groups out there because we've got to bring people into the industry. So if what you're looking at, the most likely person, are existing drivers. Focus on the other carriers, their best drivers. A lot of these carriers are dying. Or as a technology, for example, as electronic logs come along, some of these guys are just going to fold their tent and don't want to participate, and their driver's going to be available. We still have the highest failure rate in our segment of the industry than most other industries in the economy. So there are drivers available, and there are drivers that are unhappy working for someone else, and you've got to convince these guys that you're the best show in town. You've got to have something to sell, though, to do that. Okay? Then you can go to displaced workers, or you can go to the military. And this is good because they're going to have to go through a school, and most of them bring the availability of funding along with them. But when you get, even more so, you start looking at minorities. If you do that, you're going to have to start your marketing program very much, church or neighborhood oriented. Okay? You start looking at the baby boomers. Now you're talking about older people, and where do they hang out? How do you get the word through to them? And part-timers, okay? People who would rather drive a truck and get a CDL rather than pump hands at Walmart, okay? A real factor in the future, okay? And the high school, trade schools and high school graduates. Now, as a smaller carrier, very few of you can handle that whole thing. You only have certain resources, okay? So you don't want to spread your resources too thin. And the most logical thing for the average carrier to do is to go after your competitors' drivers, and you want to bring people into the workplace, through schools, people who've been displaced, who are looking for jobs, are willing to be retained, are looking for a future for the right reasons, and carry funds with them to help them through school. And the same thing is true with the military. So, what's your best advertising media? Okay, well, it used to be ads in the Sunday newspaper. Okay, and everyone thought, fine, we'll try billboards, we'll do radio, we'll do TV. None of those worked very well, but the main thing used to be newspapers with a good Sunday edition. Okay, that's all changed, folks. That's all changed. It's now your website and what drivers say about you. And each of those take a little time to evolve. Okay, driver referrals, though. Your drivers, you have a referral program, you pay them for it. Most drivers aren't going to go out and do that. Some will. It's worth having. You pay $1,000, $1,500 for a qualified candidate, and after a year, that's a hell of a deal. But word of mouth is what gets it out there. When your drivers say good things about you, and other drivers pick up on it, that's going to happen. But your website, in this day of smartphones and laptop computers and tech-savvy drivers, they are looking for jobs by doing searches through search engines or searches using keywords that take them to specific companies. And your website is the greatest tool. Now, we all have websites, but the question is, how good is your website? I can tell you from experience, most carriers have no idea how to set up a website as an effective recruiting tool. You go to their website, you know, and there it is, tell us about the company, who you are. If you're a driver, you can go here and fill out an application, okay? It's, you know, you should be projecting the best professional image you have if you want to attract a professional to come to your company, okay? You've got to be able to have a website that gets your offer out there, that tells them who you are, where you operate, and why someone would want to come and work for your company, both for their own personal betterment and for their family and their future as professionals. And also, your website now has to answer the basic questions that used to be handled on that first interview, because the driver is searching for a place to go and oftentimes pre-selling themselves on the job before they have that interview, okay? Now, there's some companies out there, you know, that recognize this, and for the most part, they're the bigger guys who have the staff and the technology, and they understand, and what they've done is they've optimized their websites that will attract the search engines and with the right kind of keywords. And the vast majority of the websites, especially with the small and medium-sized carriers, don't do that. And that technology is available now, and it's not that different or that expensive in the scheme of things, okay? You know, what is too important to do yourself. And all too often, we find people out there, and they've got someone who does their website, someone who takes care of it, and do you have any kind of a professional public relations or promotional company that's helping you get this message across? Well, no, you know, we don't, okay? So really what you need is you need a professional public relations company that has website expertise. And I'll tell you what happens when you don't. The last 2 or 3 weeks, I've gotten mailings from another professional group within the industry bragging about what they're doing with social media, okay? And the first one came out, and what they brought out was that by getting people involved and optimizing their website and social media, they were able to, instead of only attract 14 driver candidates, now they're getting 48 a month. It's a good size fleet, 500-600 trucks. And in the process, you can realize that 48 a month was supporting 110% annualized turnover. So they didn't solve the turnover problem first, okay? And they got a PR company out there that bringing lots of candidates but not doing the whole job for them. You've got to understand just exactly what this means. And so you've got to have a PR firm that has the ability to do the website after they understand what you have to offer and how to take it to the marketplace and get that message across, and then how to optimize that message. And it can happen, These are a couple of small companies here in Ohio that we've worked with over this last year, and you used to go to their website and it just looked like it, same old family company, and here's our facilities, here's our trucks, and here's why you should come work for us. And now they're going out there with the image of some real pros, have transitioned into being pros, and they're projecting that image, and their website is becoming their most effective tool, okay? And it can be yours too. And again, you need a company. In this particular case, Pole Vault was the company that did this, and they had the benefit of a PR firm who, in addition, also can design, set up, and manage websites. So all of this is possible, okay? Now, the thing is, you got to realize you've got to have a school behind this, because you're going to bring people into the industry, or in the future, you're going to have a hard time surviving, okay? And these are the issues that you've got to consider with the school. 3 issues. Schools have never been a major factor in our industry, and they're not out there as a unified force. And as a result of that, most schools do not have a certified curriculum that the industry is blessed, okay, that really says this is good, okay? And this is going to become more and more important, because the insurance companies recognize that we're going to have to allow candidates in schools going into our trucks and drive them, and they're going to have certain stipulations, and the first part of it's going to be a properly certified curriculum by a school that has credentials, okay? And So quality in curriculum is not consistent yet, okay? Many of the good schools went out of business during the recession, so this is an industry that's rebuilding, okay? But, you know, they do exist. I mean, truckload carriers with their PTDI, you know, have certified schools in all 48 states. These other ones are also the ones that you find, you know, mostly for the most part through junior tech or also commercial vehicles, you know, and have certified curriculums. You've got to be able to tie into a school and have a dedicated relationship, you know, that gives you these kind of benefits. You have some influence or can modify the curriculum in certain cases that fits your company. That you have the ability to participate in a program. This is big, okay? In other words, build a relationship, right? So you can bring candidates to the school at some particular point, okay? And the school has to offer you the ability for what they call phase 2 training. That's a certified train-the-trainer program who's in your company and can train the new graduates in the truck, you know, as they transition through their probationary period, okay? And so there's got to be a finishing curriculum that's specific to your company, okay? And when you start thinking in terms of that finishing program, that's training for new drivers and grads, usually it boils down to, you know, like 30 hours plus of additional driving in your truck. And this is what your insurance companies are going to be looking for as you use with school graduates, that you're training them as they come out of that school to operate your truck under the conditions that you will operate. You know, if they've never driven in the mountains or in snow, there's got to be a program where they're confident you're taking that next step. And when you have a certified trainer, this is not necessarily, you know, your high producer, but this is someone who's trained to teach and to cultivate other people, okay? So you've got to think in terms of, is your school going to help you evolve into specific situations, bulk, flats, reapers? They all have different requirements. This is all handled in phase 2 and has to be handled mostly within your company. Social adjustment skills, okay? As you bring people into the industry and they don't know what it's like to live in a truck or work in that environment, okay? Or maybe they're minorities, you know. Don't rule out the fact that they need to learn how to adjust. And also, think in terms of funding for driver schools. Consider developing a funding program for students that your company can sponsor. It's possible. It's subject of another program. So just a quick review. Take these ideas. Solve your turnover problem first. Get smart, start marketing, and have something to sell. You've got to have that in the future, and you've got to be able to identify who it is you're trying to sell and attract to your company, more so now than any time in the future. So let's think in terms of going down the career path together. And with that in mind, okay, if there's any questions, now's the time to ask them. No bad questions. Lisa, do we have anyone who's raised their hand for questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Someone has asked if you have any suggestions for pay structure to improve turnover, like taking some bonuses paid out over time, like 4 to 8, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we do, and that's just really subject. We're going to have a separate webinar on that, but we're very much a promoter of considering the outline I just gave you, and that's and paying a combination of salary and incentive, and then having recognition for many things such as safety, driver of the year, and all those things, you know, based on criteria. Benefits, incorporate, 401ks and all that kind of good stuff. But that's, yes, we're a strong believer in saying you're an employee. Here's our commitment to you as we would with any other employee. We're going to pay you a salary, and if you want to earn your full expectations, you've got to meet these goals. You've got to make more money then, and when you exceed it, you can get even more money. What's the other question?
What length of time do you recommend for a new driver? A couple of days, week, more? What length?
To be in the truck with a, usually,
yeah.
If you've got an experienced driver, your driver trainer, this is just to acclimate them to the situation, the policies and procedures and the customer structure. A day or two might do that, okay, based on the experience of the new one. But as long as 7 days, And that pays off, because if that new driver realizes you're making that kind of commitment just so they can get off on the right foot, plus it gives you the opportunity to reinforce the things that they learned in the orientation program so that they're doing their job right, whether it's the computer or reports, PMs, on-time performance, whatever. Yes. Any other questions?
How does one go about determining that they have the right person in the position, like a driver or driver manager?
Very, very difficult. There are testing instruments, like DISC I talked about, that have been able very effective for, for supervisory roles, management roles, admin support roles, and operational management, because they have good databases. There's never been a good database on what constitutes a good driver, so there are no really good effective personality tests, honesty tests, and things of that type. The key is to use that DISC tool to establish a benchmark for your company as to what constitutes someone who's most apt to come into your company, do the job under the conditions that are there, and interface with the people you have. This can be done. Typically, very difficult for a small company. Medium-sized company, this is an economical thing, and then you can have a test that will test someone against that benchmark to see if what their probabilities are of being successful with your company. This is a really vague field, though, and has not been explored. It needs to be explored in the future. Any others?
No other question. I just wanted to make a comment that if anybody wanted to further their conversation with you, that we would be at the TCA convention in Florida, and they were welcome to stop by the booth at 1006 and visit.
Okay, very good. Well, if there are no more questions, then certainly I would like to thank you for attending our program. Don't forget about us. We're a Trincon group in Columbus, Ohio, and we provide services. All of the things that we're talking about here, if you need some help, please get a hold of us, and we'll look forward to that. And the fact that we're not only an advisory company, but we provide true costing. You will hear from us and follow up to this particular program to see your reaction. And if there's any services that we might provide, we will be in touch with you. And if you have any questions, don't feel free. Also, please respond to the survey request that will come out to you immediately following this, so that you can tell us what you think of our program. All right? So with that in mind, we'd like to thank you for attending, and the webinar is over.